Hey, welcome back. It is the Wake Coaching Podcast. So glad you joined us today. I'm Jeff.
I'm Allie.
And we're Wake Coaching. We believe truly with all of our hearts that if you live life intentionally, you're going to leave a positive wake. You're going to leave a wake either way, but if you live by design rather than default, you're going to be able to design your wake rather than default your wake. And so we literally have been talking about family business for several weeks now.
And what more relevant topic when you're talking about your wake, which, I mean, we define as like your legacy, right? Like when you're doing business with your family.
Yeah.
That is not only business, but it's the most important relationships in your life, all wrapped up in one package.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Think about
that.
You're building life, business, legacy all together. And so, today we're talking about, actually, this is part 2. In our working with our spouses.
Yeah.
And we're talking about us working together and what that's like. And so
many people, we talk about like we work together, and so many people just respond to that with like, oh my gosh, I can never work with my spouse, right? Like we hear that comment quite often.
What's that like?
And it can be challenging, and anybody who has worked with their spouse knows that. But it can also be so incredible. That's like a superpower.
For sure.
I know you better than I know anyone.
For sure.
And you me. And so to have that level of like trust with your main business partner, like, man, that's like a superpower.
Yeah.
Right?
Seriously. There's so much, like you think about even like, you know, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team by Patrick Lencioni.
Yes. Oh,
the foundation, that's a great book.
Yes.
The foundational level of working together to not have a dysfunctional team is trust.
Trust,
You don't have trust, you don't have anything. I mean, that's with any relationship, whether working, whether a friendship, but especially, you know, your spouse, who hopefully is obviously your spouse, but should be your best friend, which I know seems strange. Some people are like, not my best friend. It should be. And then thirdly, like if you come from that space where it's my spouse whom I'm in love with everything, I mean, this is, you know, the person that God gave me that is the most unique human being I've ever met that gets to be my wife and I get to be her husband. I love it. So A, there's that. And then B, the idea of like, we're best friends. Like I work with my best friend. I mean, that's awesome. And then after that, we're business partners. Like we get to do life, business, every aspect of it together. And obviously, I mean, we're talking about this, so we probably have some specific roles, responsibilities, lanes that we stay in that we really strive hard to stay in. Because just like if you're driving, you get out of your lane, you might get hit by somebody or clip someone or slow someone down or cause some issues. And so it's so important. So let's talk a little bit today, first of all, about how we stay in our lane, if you will.
Yeah. So, of course, we coach on the EOS framework, the Entrepreneurial Operating System. And so one of the things that we teach our clients when we coach on that is creating an accountability chart, similar to an org chart, right? But that is creating like a visual illustration of what roles you have within the organization and who owns that role. And it's so incredibly crucial for an organization to have that, and for each person within it to have clarity on what they truly own. But especially for a married couple working together, I think that's so crucial because it really creates like ownership, boundaries, and expectations around like, what am I responsible for? What are you responsible for? Which can really alleviate or like help just reduce kind of like the butting heads, getting into arguments that can feel very personal. So yeah, let's dig into that.
Well, and even with that, I think about like the word accountability. Like why accountability rather than organizational chart or org chart? Like, okay, so org chart, it's virtually the same thing, except if you have the mindset of accountability means that I can be held accountable and I am held accountable to do this.
Yeah.
Because if there's a lack of accountability, there'll be a lack of community, which equals a lack of unity, right? And so you back it up. If you want to have unity in your community, you have to have accountability. There's no accountability or there's no community without accountability. So even in a marriage, like a marriage with personal, professional, partnership, business partners, like if I'm not accountable to do what I'm supposed to do, like if I don't do the dad duties at home, if I don't do those, like, okay, well, what does that do? It frustrates you which creates, some disunity, which really impacts our community, right? And so now apply that to the business space, like what we're running, the accountability chart in the business that we're running, it's the same idea. If we go through there, we fill out the accountability chart, and I'm not being accountable to what I said I would do, well, that affects our unity and our community.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. And I think when you're creating an accountability chart, you're not leaving these unspoken expectations that you may have of one another. You're having a really open, clear, honest conversation about like, what are the expectations? What do I expect you to truly own, carry forward, get these results? Like, we're having that conversation right at the beginning. Because I think if we think about it in our personal lives, I think it's really easy to see when we do this. So like, we may not communicate to our spouse or even our kids, like, hey, it actually drives me nuts when you leave clothes on the floor. Or when you leave dishes in the sink. That's like one of my
that's
my
big
pet
one.
peeves.
Well, that's mine as well, though. So we're in the same. It drives us nuts when our kids leave.
But when something seems so obvious to you and you're like, this is just the way you do it, right? Like, you don't always think to communicate that to other people. And then when it's not being done, it just irks you and it drives you nuts. Sometimes you'll communicate about it, sometimes you won't, and you'll let this just frustration continue to mount. And I think like when we work with a spouse, we can tend to hold some more of those unspoken expectations because, quite honestly, like, that's a little bit more the way we operate in our personal lives. Like, we don't have, most families don't have family meetings where they sit down and they're like, these are the responsibilities. These are the things you need to do. We just don't communicate as clearly and proactively.
Well, and it's interesting because the expectation isn't communicated, but you're expected to perform on it. And when you don't perform on it, that expectation isn't met, which creates frustration. And then you're like, well, why didn't you do what you're supposed to do? And you're like, you didn't tell me to do that. Well, you should know to do that. Well, how should I know to do that? Like, there's just this, it's this roundabout, and you get stuck in the fact that you actually didn't communicate that expectation.
Right. So having this accountability chart, like being really clear, this is your role. This is my role. And even like the reporting structure, like it doesn't matter that you're the husband or I'm the wife, like gender roles, all of those things, we're setting those aside and we're saying, this is your role, Jeff. This is my role, Allie. And so, okay, Jeff is the visionary. He's the leader. He's the CEO. And I report up. That means he has final call if we don't agree on something, right? Like and we're having just really clear conversations about those things and erasing some of those like assumptions or unspoken expectations that we may naturally bring into the workplace because I am the wife and you are the husband. And so it's really important to make sure we're like checking those at the door, even if that's the way it is at home, and clearly communicating what is it here in these walls.
Yeah. And I think even as you talk about that, like part of that, like CEO, like, or CEO and COO, like those different spaces, like that really does have to do, what you just mentioned, the idea, like we're setting the gender components aside, like, well, husband, wife, it's not this traditional, well, he works, she says, it's nothing like that. It's like, okay, what are your unique abilities? Right? So if Allie is she has more of a visionary mindset, then that makes sense that she's in the CEO role. And if I'm more of a get it done, I'm task oriented, detail, like very much, here's the process, here's what we do. If that's more me, it makes sense that I'm in the COO role. And so I think about that, like, that's where you set that aside and really like, what are your unique giftings? And then you fill in the accountability chart based upon that. Right? And so I think that sometimes people can like trip up over that. Like, and I think as a man, I have no issue. Like if Allie is better at something than me, like I have no issue. Like I'm not insecure about that. Like I'm like, Allie, like thank God you're good at that because I suck and I really need you there. Like in order for us to really work well together, we have to know each other's strengths and weaknesses. And quite frankly, that starts with me knowing my own strengths and weaknesses. Because if I don't know those and Allie tries to point them out to me, like, you're really strong in that area, well, that's going to feel good, right? That's going to go to my head. But if she says, hey, you're not so great at that area, that's not going to feel good, and it's going to go to my heart. And so for me to really understand, hey, I'm good at this and not good at this, and actually, this is where I need you, and you can really help in this organization or help at home, wherever it might be.
I think just the last thing to say about having clarity on the accountability chart is like, okay, so we clearly know what we're expecting of one another. We've made agreements about that. We've talked about these expectations, all the things. Now, if there's an issue and I do have to bring it up to you, it feels a lot less like a personal attack. Like, Jeff, you suck at this. And it's much more like, hey, okay, you are over whatever, sales. Okay, we're not hitting our goals, right? You own this. Let's talk about it. It's an issue. What can I do to support you? But like, he knows like what's expected.
Yeah.
We've agreed on that. We've built that up together. Now when I address it, it's like, we created this together. We both ratified it.
Yeah.
It's not a personal attack now anymore. Or it at least feels much less like one.
Yeah.
Right?
And it's literally, I think even that you're holding me accountable to what we've previously agreed upon and communicated. And I think that sometimes like the word accountability, it seems a lot more like you're getting called into the principal's office and you're getting talked down to, as opposed to like, oh yeah, communicated upon, we agreed upon this, yes, this is my accountability. Or I'm accountable to make sure this happens. And I think if you're not open to accountability, I don't think you're open to collaboration, because in that situation, Allie could be like, hey, like, I notice you're not getting this done. Now, this is one of the responsibilities that you're accountable for. Why is that? Like, why you're not getting that done? And I could be like, honestly, I've been super busy, or I just dropped it. Or I could be like, you know what, honestly, I really don't know what I'm doing. Could you help? Because it doesn't help us, it doesn't help our business if I'm holding on to something out of pride because of why I suck at this and I don't really know what I'm doing. When Allie's like holding me accountable for something, it's an opportunity for me to say, hey, I actually don't know what I'm doing and I could use your help on this. And that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of it being a process and it doesn't feel personal.
Absolutely. So the accountability chart is absolutely huge. Last thought on how to alleviate some of the just common frustrations and pain points of working together. One of them is like bringing and including the kids into the business. It's this idea of like, I talk to a lot of people and they want this really clear, hard and fast separation between work and personal life. But when you work with your spouse and you work with your family, there is not that separation. And so if you're trying to constantly kind of like tear it apart, it's not right. It doesn't feel right. It doesn't work because there isn't. And so one of the things that we've done is try to really like include our kids in the business, have them benefit from it, get some of the perks, so that they don't feel like it's stealing their mom and dad's attention and they're just trying to vie for the attention and it like we're involved in something that they don't know about, they're not included in. Like now they feel like a part of the team. Yeah. And they get excited and they start championing the business and it's something they're a part of rather than it's kind of stealing time away from them.
Honestly, you've seen this if you've watched our the Wake coaching channel at all. You've seen that. You've seen our kids as a part of it. We have the whiteboard sessions, which it kind of started off where it was like we're trying to like communicate family values and communicate family behavior in the culture we want in our home. And it started with honestly one day the kids just kind of sucked. Like they're acting like they literally sucked. And I was like, you guys are acting like mosquitoes. And I'm like, all right, come to the whiteboard. And we did bees versus mosquitoes and like how to be a bee versus being a mosquito. And mosquitoes suck, but bees actually benefit the community.
Our kids are also like very entrepreneurial, at least a fair amount of them. Yeah. Like they have these ideas for businesses and they want to, do dog grooming or
sell shoes online.
Car detailing.
Or, Lige, one of our sons, he drew a comic book. He made a comic book personally for someone at school and sold it to him. And I was like, he talks about his comic book business. We're like, that's awesome, Lige. She made $20. I was like, what?
Yeah, so we encourage the, creating businesses.
Yeah.
We even we'll coach them sometimes on little things that we coach our clients on. So they are starting to understand business, how we work with other people, because we give them a little bit of a taste of it with their businesses. I have to just share, the best one was Back Break.
Oh,
which was
yeah, that was a good one.
massage service.
Yeah. Bo
and Elijah.
They set up the back break, and I was like, what is a back break? But it's like a break for your back.
Yeah.
And they come and they rub your back, and they're like, how much? Is like, it's 5 cents. I was like, deal, done. Like, I mean, you get what you pay for, so it's not that, but still, it was phenomenal.
That was the cutest one.
Yeah.
But then, I mean, just last example is we do have the gym. We have Discover Strength, right? We do personal strength training. And so the kids come in and they work out.
Yeah.
Even our little 7-year-old has come in and gotten some training sessions, right?
Yeah.
And that's something they might train once every 3 months, but they show us their biceps and how big they are.
They're all tore up and stuff. But it's fun because
time.
we have what we call family dinner, where we have our team members, our staff from Discover Strength come over.
Oh, yeah.
And maybe once every, I don't know.
Once a month.
Once a month, something like that. And so our staff members are interacting with our kids, and our kids are interacting with our staff members. Yeah. And we just hired a new staff member, he's onboarding right now. And Finn, who is our 13-year-old, is like, oh, I can't wait to meet him. And it's just so interesting that here are kids, they know our staff members by name, and our staff members know our kids by name. And it's just one of those things where it's like, this is just what you do. But I never knew any of my dad's coworkers. Yeah. I never knew any, it was just, there was such a definitive line between this is work and this is home. But I mean, we live in a time and space now where no, our kids can walk into and participate and experience the businesses that we're creating.
Yep. And that means they get to celebrate wins with us. When we have a big win, a new client, just different things, they genuinely get excited because they understand what it means for us.
And can I say this? I think them understanding the wins is one side of it, but then also them understanding the losses.
Yes.
Because sometimes Dad comes home and he seems stressed, or he seems like, Dad, you don't seem like you had a good day. And I'll say, well, this happened today. And oh, that's too bad. And because they know the client, they know the staff member, they understand, it's not just me living in my sadness alone. They can actually see my sadness or see my frustration or see my stress about it and come up and comfort me. It's kind of strange and amazing when your 15-year-old daughter's like, Dad, you seem like you had a rough day. You okay? And I'm like, you know what, Sal? Sally's her name. I said, you know what, Sal? It was a rough day. She comes over, gives me a hug. She understands it because she feels the weight of it, right? Yeah. It's not just that's what they do outside the home.
And it's not putting the weight of the business on.
Correct.
But it's we really believe in building a culture within our family where it's we're doing life together. Life means everything.
Yeah.
We're not insulating them from understanding what it means to own these businesses, to be entrepreneurs, because hopefully they will be one day, some of them, and they'll understand what it means and what that undertaking represents. And so anyways, that's a core value of ours, just really bringing our kids into everything that we do and doing life with them. So that's been an incredible way to kind of bring them in, make them a part of it, rather than them kind of despising the business and feeling like it's stealing something from them.
They're always secondary. This is a great way for them to feel involved and a part of. And like you said, I think that was a really great distinction. They're not feeling the full weight of all, because when you do business, not great things happen on, occasionally. And so you're not putting that weight on them, but they get a chance to feel the weight a little bit, because they're going to notice in us either way. If we had a great day, we're going to be up. If we had a not great day, we're going to be a little bit down. So they're going to notice it anyways, but to let them in on it, to communicate to them on it, I think that's huge, because then they do feel included. They feel like they're a part. They feel like they matter. So I encourage you, if you're in business and there's any way, if you own your business, if there's any way that you can include your kids, even in the smallest detail, I encourage you to do that because it starts to get them to think outside of their own little world. I've worked with students, like literally 0 to 18 students for 15 to 20 years of my life. And literally their perspective is just right in front of them. And it used to be before a phone, but now it's even their phone. And so to give them a perspective larger than what their normal day in, day out student experience would be, or teenage experience, I think that's huge to help them, to pull them in, to allow them to feel the weight. Rather than like just always protecting them, I think it truly is important for them to help for their development, for them to feel the weight of disappointment and also the joy of success. I think it's a big thing. So I encourage you, pull them in, have them be a part. Watch our whiteboard sessions. Like even you sit down with your kids, you can show it to them, or you can copy it, either way. But literally, I think that's important. Like just pull them in, find a way to help them feel a part of what you're doing. It's so incredibly valuable. Hey, thank you for joining us for another Wake Coaching podcast. I encourage you, if you'd subscribe, if you're not subscribed, if you'd share it, be sure to if this benefited you, be sure to share it with people. I'm sure it'll benefit them as well. Thanks so much.